Welcome to Washington Times Higher Ground. I want to dig right into your story because it is an incredible story and what you're doing, encouraging, your church and other Christians around the country to foster and to help children. And so we're going to get into all of that. We're going to talk about your book, Fostering Jesus. But before we get there, what was it for you that sort of brought foster care into sight? Why did you dive into it?
Oh, great question. Well, first of all, thanks for giving voice to this issue today. I mean, it's one that needs to be talked about, and there's some awareness that's needed in our world. So, thank you so much. For me, the awareness started several years ago. I'm currently a pastor, lead pastor at a church called Christ Chapel in Woodbridge, Virginia. But previously, I was on staff at a church just north of the Chicagoland area, and there's a great need for helping foster children there. I didn't know it at the time, but what happened was I just simply went to the community and asked them how we could help. As a pastor and a Christian, I think helping our community is a hallmark. It's kind of our brand, if you will. I mean, just helping people because God cares and loves about people. So I went to some of the leaders in our county, and I just asked them, hey, if we were to wave a magic wand and just, do anything that you would want us to do as a church, how could we help you? What's the number one thing that you would have the church do if you could control that? And they all looked at each other and said, for us, it's foster care. And so that's what sent us on this whole journey. I came home and my wife and I said, let's start ourselves. Let's be a foster parent. And that led to fostering a few children, because the goal with foster care is reunification. It's helping stand in the gap for them to be able to go back and be reunited with their family. So we got on board with that, started being a foster parent. But one day, the question was asked, hey, these children are in a situation where they do need a permanent home. So would you be a foster parent that is now an adoptive parent, which is a whole nother question, And so
What was going through your mind when you first heard that? Because that's it's a whole different mindset, I would imagine, than
yeah,
what you were
it's very
doing.
clear. What was going through my mind was no, I am not going to do that. I was, busy working, raising. I had three other children, and so I just didn't know how I could possibly do that. So I actually prayed, and I told God, hey, I have thought about this. I'm using the brain you gave me, and I don't. I mean, my house isn't big enough. I don't have big enough cars for three more kids, because that would be six for us. And I said no. So, but I did tell God. I said, I follow God. I love God. I'm a Christ follower. So I said, Lord, if you really want me to do this, then just you've got to make a way, because I cannot see how this is going to happen. And so I
That's a
gave them,
dangerous prayer, by the way. That is
yes,
a
right,
dangerous prayer.
right. Yep. And so I gave them a little crack, a little window into my life, and I said, you got to do it if you're going to do this. And do you know, within 24 hours of praying that prayer, we had 7 different, what we would call just confirmations. I mean, I was sold at 3. I mean, the third one, I was like, okay, nope, it was 4, 5, 6, and 7. And so it was just very clear that this was what God wanted us to do. I think the biggest one out of all of those is that, I mean, our house was not big enough. We just literally did not have enough rooms to fit all these kids. And so God, in that 24 hours, he brought a guy to our house that we knew from the past. And he said, hey, I've been praying about you. I know you're a foster parent, and I have come into a house. I flip houses. And so would you like to look at buying a bigger house? And I said, well, I have not considered that. And he said, well, I have a buyer, and so I can make it all happen. And within 24 hours, we had bought and sold on our house, and bought a new one, sold our house, and it was for the same price. The price I sold my house for was the exact same price I bought this new home, in the same neighborhood, same school district. Nothing changed. but I got 2 new bedrooms from that whole deal. So we had 2 new bedrooms for all the kids to be able to stay in. So I just believe, to me, the message was, when I gave God a little bit of room there, he said, game on. I know how to do that. God made it happen. You know why? Because he loves kids that much.
That is incredible. So you initially said no, God said yes, then you said yes. You end up with this house. You guys are leading the charge on this personally, right? At what point did you say, now we've done this, this is going to be a ministry focus, it's going to be something that we want to bring to other families in our church, inspire other people to take part in it?
Yeah, great question. The answer to that is that over time, as we began to walk this out, others were seeing us do it, and it just made it more normal. It took away the stereotypes and the fears, and they're just great little kids, and they wanted to get involved, and so we started a ministry at the church we were at, again in just north of Chicago, and we just began doing that step by step. It grew to the point where we had created a support community where some people fostered children, and many, many others, essentially the whole church rallied around and supported those that did. So not everyone can be a foster parent, or even should be, but everyone is called, according to the scriptures, to support and care for the widows and the orphans, for children that don't have anyone to care for them. And in our world, that's that right in our backyard. That would be foster children. So that's what our church did. They supported the foster parents, and this grew to where 30%, the county told me this, 30% of all of the foster parents in the county began attending our church. And why? It's because they received support. They received care and love, and it just encouraged them to keep going. So my encouragement, and what we wrote in the book, is that you can do something in order to help others in foster care. It's just about getting involved, doing simple things like writing a note of encouragement, bringing a little bag of diapers and just giving it to someone and saying, hey, we see you. We know that this matters, and we want to encourage you in what you're doing.
And the book you're referring to is Fostering Jesus, Answering the Call to Foster Care in the Home and Church. And this book came out earlier this year, and I want to talk a little bit more about it, but I have to go back just a moment here to what you just said. 30% of the foster families in that county. What county are you in Virginia?
Sure. So the story that I told you,
Chicago.
that started in Kenosha County, southeastern Wisconsin, between 2 international cities of Chicago and Milwaukee. And so there's a great need there. What we found is that not only did foster care obviously change the lives of the children and our community, but we also found that there were many other churches that wanted to rally together, work together. That it was really, politically, it didn't matter. It was a bipartisan issue. People came together. It was around helping kids. So we really saw there was a lot of energy around working on this issue together. We did that for about 13 years, and then we came to Northern Virginia here, where we've been working on the same issue in our church for the last 2 years now.
So you have two different, church bodies to look at here. You have the one where you did it for 13 years. Now you've been doing this for a couple of years. You mentioned, obviously, having 30% of the foster families come is pretty incredible. We know there was an impact for those families, people coming alongside them. You mentioned it also changed your church community. How did you see, because it's not often, I guess some churches, they do pick an issue and they stick with it, but this is such an important issue. You guys went all in on it. How did it affect the lives of the people in your church and the community, the church community itself?
Well, foster care is one of those things that what I didn't know this going in. But what I learned is that it's really it touches the nerve center of the community, because it affects so many things. When you have children that are vulnerable and need help, it affects the education system. It affects the judicial system. It affects food, housing. All of the different areas of a community are touched by the foster care system. And so in America, in order for the foster care system to work, I mean, it literally sits on love. People have to care in order for foster care to work in the United States. So it draws on the compassion of people to help, and then we're either able to help or not. And with the rise in opioids and just the what happened through COVID and the isolation, I mean, all of the pressure of that just increased over the last few years. And so there's a need for people to help and jump in. So we saw our church, just understand this issue more, be able to figure out how to help, and that it's very simple to support a foster family. And then we saw more and more people actually jump in and begin to foster themselves. So it was kind of a combination of the congregation picking it up and figuring it out. And then you see the impact of that in the community. So the people in the community would talk about it. The social services volunteers and workers, they would talk about it with other people, and it just kind of spread throughout the community.
And obviously you took this experience, you wrote Fostering Jesus. We're going to talk about the book in a moment here, but do you feel, and this is a little bit of a loaded question, and it's a yes or no, and you can explain why, do you feel the church today as a whole collectively is doing enough on these issues currently?
Well, there's more to do for sure. And I think that a recent survey showed that only 8% of the churches in the country are doing something to help with foster care. And so 92% of the churches are not engaged in this issue. So that's why we wrote the book. It's awareness. It's what we talked about at the top of the interview is giving voice to it and understanding that God cares about it. So when we talk to Christ followers, to people that believe in God, it's spoken about in Isaiah chapter 1, where it's not an option. It is a mandate. In fact, that chapter says, that God is telling the people, hey, you're worshiping me, but stop doing that. Stop doing that. Go and help the orphans. Once you've done that, then come back and worship me. I mean, that's unbelievable for God to say. And you see in the New Testament in James 1:27 that this is true religion. If we want to be religious people, we want to please God, this is part of the equation. So it's not optional. It's not after you get your master's degree or, after you get the bigger house. It's not after all of that. And then you can do something to help children that are in need. No, it's about doing it now. And so really, the big question is how. There's another survey that was done that showed that 48% of pastors, leaders of churches in America said that they would put this at the top vision of their church if they only knew how. And that 39% of the people in the average American church have thought about and been convicted, care about foster care in some way. They just don't know how to get involved. So really, it's on us to just make that on-ramp a little bit easier, a little bit more clear, to talk about it in areas like this, to inspire people, because foster care really is an issue of today, but it gives them hope about what they can do tomorrow. And then when churches know how to get involved, it changes the trajectory of a life for forever.
What has this taught you about trust, especially in your own journey?
Well, with trust, I mean that is that's the foundational issue. And children, they struggle when they don't have someone that they can trust. And you and every adult has had broken trust in their life, and they've had people that they could rely on. And so we all know that when there is steady, relationships in our life, that helps us grow. So with children, they're the same way. And when they're in foster care and what they have trusted in their life is now broken, it's now volatile, there isn't consistency, they need someone to stand in the gap for that. So when I have talked with foster parents over the years, I will tell you that my testimony would be every single foster parent I have ever talked to says that when they get into it, that they see a different side of God that they have never seen before. They have seen his compassion and they've seen the vision that he has for people in a way they just have never experienced before. So I tell people, hey, if you want to grow closer to God, this is a way to do it, because you will experience and see God's face in a way you just can't unless you invite the community into your home or support those that are doing it. So either way, when you help support foster families and vulnerable kids, you're able to see the heart of God just in a way you never otherwise would.
So, final question for you. People who are watching this or listening to it and they want to get involved, where can they go to find out more about the book and about your ministry?
Sure. Well, I just have a website. It's called fosteringjesus.com. So they can go to that website and pick up a copy of the book, start reading. Again, it has it has stories of a few different foster families that are just encouraging. They will encourage you. If you have a spouse that's, not really there and you're there, I mean, this can help encourage them that way. There's scriptures about the heart of God in the book. And so it kind of helps you understand that. And then the practical things. There's some organizations that you need to know about that will help you as a church be able to move forward, get involved, do some assessments, and find out what are the very first steps that you can take that are simple. If you are a individual and you just want to take some first steps, there are some very basic things that you can do, and that's all in the back end of the book that talks about very first steps. So an organization like Backyard Orphans, they are a great organization to do some assessment for a church that wants to get involved. And then locally, throughout the country, there are all kinds of agencies that can help. And my book just kind of has links to some of those places to get started.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, sharing your heart, and bringing us through this incredible work that you do. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks again for having me on and for giving voice to those who don't have a voice.